Hello and welcome to This Week in X, presented by Crushing Comics, where we get together and talk about all of Marvel Comics' X-Men comic books every single week. And we are here today to talk about New Mutants issue number 16, which was out on the 24th of February, 2021. So here's your warning. We're going to talk about this issue so thoroughly. We're going to get real thorough. And that means we're going to talk about a lot of the history of these characters, other things happening on Krakoa, maybe even other things in the Marvel Universe. So this is a full spoilers program, and you should know that before you get thorough with us. For New Mutants number 16, I want to go around and have a lightning round. There's so much to talk about in this issue, so please resist getting specific about certain plot threads and just give a reaction, because there's a lot. Tyler, let's begin with you.
I love that there is so much happening in each issue since Ayala took over. So both Ayala and Williams are channeling Claremont with like multiple stories happening at the same time and developing at different pace. I love the number of characters from other books appearing in this, making it feel a lot more immersive in this particular era. And then while the individual storylines are not equally engaging, I find that the characters' voices feels really on point here. And the art may not be as pretty as Reese's space arc with Hickman, but considering the sheer number of characters that he actually cramped in and the different environments that he has to draw in this issue, I mean, it is really, really impressive. I give it like a 4.25 actualization essence out of 5.
Harry.
All right, so this book is often very good, and I enjoy it quite a bit. And I love looking at it because I think the art's incredible. And I know that it is, I think Ayala's very good at juggling a lot of things. My opinion is that this is the issue where there's just a little bit too much. And I found myself near the end being like, okay, there's another thing, and it feels like just a little bit tacked on, and I'm not invested in this. And this issue introduces a whole other plot line in a whole other world. That's another whole friggin' thing. And I kind of felt tired reading it, which is not the feeling you want. But the voices are on point, and it is mostly interesting, but I do feel like they bit off a bit more than they could chew, like a little bit. So I would give it 3.9 lovely little rabbit people out of 5.
Buddies!
I'm glad I got that one.
Yeah, should we kick Harry off? Because
I gotta go.
Well, we don't know where he falls in the range yet. We don't even know. Why?
He's a 3.9.
Yeah, Fariha, what was your reaction? Your reaction is give Harry the boot.
Yeah, kill Harry. That's his reaction.
Yeah, like, I mean, you haven't read enough Claremont, and it shows, and I'm saying,
whoa!
I'm a Claremont card character.
Fariha slamming the gate closed.
Yeah,
now that she's the gate closed.
Right? Now that you've read Claremont, like anyone who hasn't gets voted off the island.
Excuse me. No resurrection for you, sir.
Yeah,
no, I mean, it's like, now that I have read like a whole bunch of New Mutants since December, so now I'm a New Mutant stan, and this kind of very much falls in line with how New Mutants story goes. There's like so much going on, multiple storylines happening at the same time. It's so much more satisfactory to read it all in one go, and kind of, not like it feels like a lot when you're reading on your own. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. There's a lot going on. However, I have some things to say about art, which I shall reserve for later. But otherwise, to me, it was a 4.8 out of 5.
Oh, dang.
I think this was real close to perfection in an X-Men comic book. It really, really feels like that classic kind of super, super compressed story that we got from a certain, not just all of Claremont's years, but a very certain period. And I like that. And I can understand that there are some readers who are not from that vintage, or who are bored of that vintage and have moved on to the current vintage, where this just feels like a lot. But the reason it works for me is because it's all of those things, and the voices and the connections to the other plots. It's forward moving. It doesn't feel like we're going down any of these little paths and like hitting a dead end, like, okay, well, there's like something dumb that we could have left out of the issue. I wouldn't know what to cut from this issue. Does it, maybe to Harry's point, have like one plot too many? yes, maybe it does. But I don't know that I would be able to cut out any one of those plots and still get all the things that I wanted to get. And the final thing I'll say there before we go into the more general discussion is New Mutants has always worked well as a big cast book. I think if you try to get it down to like 3 or 4 New Mutants, you're not fulfilling the bill of New Mutants. But the mistake is trying to make New Mutants a book where they're all walking around together and doing stuff. It is not that kind of team book, and it has never worked as that kind of team book. It's a book where they're scattered. Some of them are distrusting the other, because it's about like the growth and the change that you go through and how your feelings about people change as you grow. And I just think that like that's what's so energizing to me about Vita Ayala's run right now, is that it just has that. And I feel like if a New Mutants run doesn't have that, I get very bored very quickly. So I'm ready to be the #1 cheerleader at the top of the cheerleading pyramid for this issue. And it feels good to be able to say that about Vita Ayala, because I like when writers also grow and change. And I've read a ton of their work and I haven't loved it, and I love this. And that's, to me, exciting. It's as exciting as comics get for me. All right, that was a kind of a diatribe. Sorry.
Fariha, just look me in the eyes when you kill me and kick me off the island. That's all I ask.
I will. No, and have you noticed that, I kind of called back a previous issue blog thread from our X-Men talk? Like, this is, I'm turning into, oh my God, I'm turning into Claremont.
I think you're turning into Apocalypse and you're trying to make Harry do the Crucible. Okay, so there's a whole lot of plot here. Let's start out with the plot that kind of bookends the issue, which is sneaking out of the Krakoa to the lighthouse to Otherworld to deeper into Otherworld, right? So there's a number of young mutants who are just doing their teenage thing. They're sowing their oats, and they sneak into Otherworld to be encountered by a very horrific looking Jamie Braddock. Rice really knocks
He's
it out.
really scary looking.
It is real scary. And 2 of them flee back to Krakoa, but one of them continues on their adventures. And eventually, it's time to retrieve that mutant. And for reasons that are plot driven, it's Danny and Karma who go with no one else into the depths of Otherworld, where one could die and never come back the same, to retrieve this errant young mutant. Tyler, what are you thinking about this otherworldly plot?
I mean, I'm actually surprised that the Otherworld stuff is being explored in Mutants instead of Excalibur.
Shocked. Totally shocked.
I mean, I love several aspects of it, right? I think the first thing was just the randomness of the whole thing. The guy was just, the kid was just running there to take a selfie, and then one of them starts riding around on a dinosaur in different worlds and making friends with like with Sheriff Whitechapel, and it's like it's really weird and it's really nonsensical, but it's also quite fun in a way. And then you have like, and then that brings to me, I think, one of the best and in some ways the worst page in this book, that splash page of Kama and Danny riding the horse with let me specify why I think it's the best and the worst. The best.
I think it took me as long to read that page as like a whole issue of Hickman X-Men. That is a lot. I spent a long time reading that page.
I know. I mean, there's a lot packed into the page. I love the words. I love the bonding, and I love the fact that Danny could be Danny. Danny doesn't have to be the leader of the group. Danny doesn't have to be the big sister. She could be angry here. She could be frustrated here with Karma, because they are kind of like the same age.
Mm-hmm. And they're the oldest of the original Newmans, and then Cannonball just a little bit younger. Yeah,
exactly. And like she doesn't feel like she has to be, the one, the stoic one, or the one that grounds everything. So here she can be frustrated. She can show her emotion to Karma freely. The thing that I really hate about that page is the placement of the word balloons cover up some of the beautiful paintings by Reese, and
one of them right over a face.
Exactly. I feel like you don't even have to do that. Like that block of words that cover that face. Why do you need that words? I mean, you don't need that. And some of the word balloons like cover certain things, which I thought like, well, there is this random mountain there. Why don't you just move the word balloon down to cover the mountains? Like, why is it covering a drawing? Like, it doesn't make sense to me, and that's why I think it's really bad.
Harry, what did you think about the Otherworld plot? Is this the one you would cut? Now I'm in suspense. You've set up a wonderful don't reveal it until we get there. Would you have cut this one? Okay.
Well, now that we're talking about it, I felt it with our last Excalibur discussion, and now I'm just going to vocalize it. I'm tired of Otherworld. I'm done. Like, we just had a massive ass crossover about it. We're having it in other books now. If we're gonna, every book's gonna go here now because like, ooh, you can actually die here, and that's how they get around like the lack of stakes of the resurrection.
Yeah, that would be dumb.
I'm sick of it. I'm tired. I want to be clear though, but to be nice, this is the best looking part of the book. I think taking the freaky depiction of him. And then as we're all going to say, I'm sure that splash that Tower just talked about is jaw dropping. I wasn't as bothered by the word balloons, but I turned the page. I gasped. I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. But I'm just, on a very basic level, I don't care about Otherworld anymore, and I'd like us to stop doing it. And the other plot lines weren't exactly doing it for me either, so we'll get to that too.
Fariha, what did you think about our return to Otherworld?
So this actually makes perfect sense that why we need to close that damn gate, because kids are going in there as a dare, and it's perfectly in line, to be honest. This is what kids will do. If they find out this is one place they can go and take risks, this is what they're going to do. And I'm glad that finally we're seeing that.
I would do it day one. If I was in high school on Krakoa, I would be there like the day one that gate was open. Are you kidding me? Like, they're daring you not to go. You're gonna go.
You're gonna go. And this is exactly what it is. And there is also such a very cool callback about Karma and Danny going to look for the mutants from the callback to Back to the School, New X-Men Back to the School, because that's exactly what two of them were doing. They were the one who were going and bringing back mutants. So this was a callback to that as well. So that I absolutely like. And then for the art, it's fine. There's a lot of great art, but I cannot believe this particular storyline has two penises in it. The Excalibur house. Just look at it.
Oh yeah, that one I saw. Okay, but what was the other one?
It was twice. It happened twice.
Oh, it's just the lighthouse twice.
Yeah, the lighthouse twice, and both time it looks like freaking penises, and I'm like
that Little Mermaid thing.
Yeah, I'm like, ew, like gross. I mean, just look at them, you guys. I cannot unsee it. And
this issue is
the whole time, I mean, I know the last time Peter was talking about that face is not being completed, and I was looking for that, how many faces are not being completed, because now that's something that Peter put in my head and I have to look for it. But at the same time, I was looking at this it's it's just like penises with multiple balls underneath. It's
This issue's full of dicks.
I know you guys are like, I mean, it didn't matter. After that, seeing that, the rest of the art didn't matter to me, because I'm like, no, absolutely no. We cannot have this Krakoan mutants live in penises, people. Like, what? Like, no. X-Factor has bonier and Excalibur has penises? Like, ugh. I said the word penis too much. Please save me, Peter.
Okay. Look, wow. So here's the thing with this Otherworld plot. Like, I think it's playing with this idea of teenagers kind of testing their own mortality, right? It's when you want to change up your identity. It's when you want to take risks. Your brain is not fully formed, so some of your decisions are not the best decisions, as Harry could show to us with probably some more stories. And I think it tracks, right? I think it drives home something from another book, which is like, this gate is a problem. We said at the time, who would even go through there? Ha ha ha. But here's the answer. So I think that really works. I kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit at Danny and Karma going in without anybody else going with them, and Danny kind of being like, I'm a tracker. Yeah, but are you the two most defended people? You don't want to bring Warpath? Really? Really? What is he? He's not even in this issue. Where is he? Except for in his journal entry. And then to the lack of faces thing, I like it when it's artistic. I don't like it when it's just on a crowded panel and it feels like the panel's unfinished. But in this double page spread, there's towards the edges of it, the characters are less drawn. And on one side, we have Karma just in pen and ink. And on the other side, like there's barely a face sketched onto either of them. And to me, that works because we're spending time with two characters here. We clearly have a sense of who they are and what they look like and what Rice's version of them looks like. And I think and it's showing them from all different areas in space. And I think then you can use that artistic shorthand and it's stylistic, as opposed to on a page where there's a bunch of bald-headed teenage mutant boys of about the same size and shape, and you can't tell them apart unless their faces are drawn in, and you're not sure which one is Anil. To me, those are like two different circumstances of the no faces phenomena. And so we end this Otherworld plot with Danny and Karma are taken captive, although they theoretically could probably break out easily in Merlin's dark part of the Fae, but they're kind of just letting it play out. Meanwhile, this runaway mutant is just still running away and doing whatever.
Having a great time.
He's about to go to Sevalith,
yeah.
Yeah, the vampire place.
Like,
so
he... But
go ahead.
I was also going to say that the Jamie Braddock Faye, he was just projecting that just to freak the mutants out, right? I mean, he doesn't, we know that he doesn't look like that. He just projected himself like that. It's like, I just had a good fun. Here you go. Here's that dragon.
Well, and we also know the reason why he's dressed so royally now, because the gate changes him when you pass through it. Because when Danny and Kama passed through the gate, they were wearing like D&D garbs, like literally like Kama has that thing on her head,
which is consistent with the when Excalibur went through too. It's just fun. This is the book to book kind of stuff I like. The little stuff that doesn't like make you have had to have read the other book, but if you read it, it'll let you in a little bit deeper. But
sorry, I know you're trying to rush on, but I have one question. Why do you think Jamie basically made that the two things, the candles and the potion? So the actualization essence and the candle of revelation in the basket.
They're just being a jerk. Here's a gift bag.
I think he's just like having his Alice in Wonderland fantasy,
Yeah. And it's also like Otherworld MLM, like multi-level marketing of selling crap. That's what it is. It means nothing, but yeah.
Well, it is priced, right? Because that's what the data page says, because the crooked market wants to buy them.
That's because the king is selling them.
I also will admit, not to linger, but the gift that they brought him, was it just a Krakoan flower?
No, a bagel
tree.
It was one of the bagel tree, one of the infamous bagel trees. Okay.
But it was odd. It was I had to assume that. It was the art wasn't totally clear about
a little murky there.
I mean,
I would kill for a bagel tree that could make some American style bagels and plant it in my yard, let me tell you. But we've heard the Krakoan bagels are not quite the same. Okay. So the other half of this plot really is that the Shadow King may or may not be influencing everybody, but he certainly is having a more direct influence over a small group of kids. And we see that here. This is the kind of bad kids who wandered away. And among them are No Girl, the floating brain, Anil, who's being written as though he's never been written before. I don't understand why. Scout, who seems to have some sense in her head, and a few other kids, including Cosmar, who was the Brazan creation here, who kind of vividly projects fantastical dreams out in reality. And Shadow King, not necessarily being evil, has the suggestion of like, let's use our powers to swap bodies so those of you who are trying to experience something different can. Which actually is interesting because it plays on this theme of kind of therapy and looking at yourself from the outside, which was from Warpath's data page as well. But it does not go super well for these kids because of who they are to begin with. Cosmar can feel free. Scout can suddenly feel pain. Anil's body starts transforming in some weird way that I don't even know what was supposed to tell us. And so Shadow King kind of snaps his fingers and puts everybody back where they were. And they all kind of think it's cool, but Scout is like, you're playing with life here. And there's this theme in it, and then I'll turn it over to you, starting with Fariha. Shadow King Sir Amul says, death no longer limits us, versus Scout saying, your body, your life, it's not cheap or worthless. And I think that this really gets to the center of this whole the malaise of youth that we've been seeing in this Vida Ayala run, which is that kids can't figure out if death no longer limits them or if their life has value. I really think it got to the heart of it. But let's hear what everybody says. Fariha.
No, I was actually very much shocked and also loved it that it came from Scout, because we have seen her grow up from her putting severed fingers in people's pocket to now talking about death and everything. But the thing is, it also makes sense that it comes from Wolverine, because she does, even before the resurrection protocol, she has healing power. She doesn't need to worry about death as much as everyone else, but for her, she had all these thoughts and everything that she's been thinking about, maybe potentially because of the group that she's in, and she's kind of talking about it. And it also kind of shows like what I've been kind of screaming about every time someone's like, oh, X-Men can die anymore, what's Jake? Because death is not the finality. It's not the ultimate worst thing that can happen to you. There's so many other things. But then at the same time, one of the youngest mutant also have the same thought as one of the oldest mutant, Apocalypse, when he said to Richter, don't let go of your body, or don't, he came up with the whole idea of crucible and everything, because it's your body is sacred and all of that. And it's come kind of, even though we didn't see two of them interact, but they're also kind of saying the same thing. So which is important. And I'm glad that Scout said it. And I was also surprised that, wow, our girl has come so far.
Harry, were you also a proud mutant parent here, or did you have some other thoughts?
I enjoyed this. I think this is all really interesting stuff, where what happens when a lack of death, how does that affect a young mind, and how seriously do you look at that, and how seriously do you look at your own body and like kind of that kind of importance or lack thereof. I'm going to be honest though, while reading it, I just was mostly kind of tired and annoyed by the lack of, it felt like momentum of this plot, where this is like the third straight issue of like this plot exploring interesting ideas in the woods, and then they just leave the woods. This needs to go somewhere, please. And I think in this, what you can say is it pushed Scout along and got her to a new place mentally, which is good. But like, this is the third straight issue of them just kind of like raising interesting questions, which is great, which, to be clear, much better than other books that we might just earlier discuss, to be clear. But it does feel like a little bit of wheel spinning. And I just want them to get to something here.
I mean, we did discover that, like, in this case, when the bodies were swapped, the bodies
atrophy, or they
started dying. Yeah. So that's one thing which I think maybe no one has thought about, and maybe could only be solved by the Five, because they have a reality warper there that basically changes the thing. And then the other thing I thought was quite interesting was that I mean, not interesting, but like was consistent. It's like Farouk is basically manipulating the kids, saying that, oh, you shouldn't judge Scout, and then the next line calling her selfish. So in a way, it's very subtle, because maybe the kids were more impressionable. So she's like, you shouldn't, like a kind person is like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. She's just selfish. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, but I mean, I thought it was interesting. Way of exploring certain things, certain themes that we kind of think that will be coming up, like the chimeras are something that we have seen before in Rasputin and Cardinals. So these are things which we are probably like at step 1 or 2 of this whole journey of the chimeras. So I thought that was interesting.
It definitely feels like step 1 or 2. I'll say that.
I mean, I have to say, I enjoyed the scene, I think, more than I have the scenes with Farouk in the past couple of issues, because it felt like less of a tease and more of actually something happened. Like there's conflict, right? And I feel like the scenes in the last few issues with him haven't really had conflict. But now that I hear Harry talk about it the way that he is, I am kind of saying, like, where's the there? Like, what did we get from this, really? I think we got Scout kind of saying something she kind of already knew, and we've already heard from her. And we also, get this body switching decay death thing, which certainly is a tickler of something. I mean, Shadow King's whole jam is that he frequently inhabits other people's bodies. Famously, they thought Karma was dead for a really long time, and she was inhabited by the Shadow King, and he kind of took her on a world tour. Yeah, spoilers. I told you it's an all spoilers program. So I kind of understand, and I think the last note I had in this was that whole selfish or right. Why not both? I think that not only in this comic book, but in the world, sometimes we like to pretend that just because somebody is doing something that's good for them, that they're being selfish, that they can't be right. And it's like, oh, well, it would be better if they weren't being selfish. Like, no, not only are selfish things often good for you, like that's what selfish is, right? It's not like you're just being selfish to spite other people. You're doing selfish to better yourself, but sometimes you can be right and be selfish. And I think that in this, I was like, very like, why not both? Because I think she is being selfish and I think she's also right.
But then to the point of like, the story progression, it is a good progression though, because first we just got one page of him. Then the second time we saw them that he tried to implement the idea of, oh, you should go to the crucible. And now that failed. Now he's trying to manipulate them with their power. But this also tells us the story that these kids have no supervision. They're not supervised. Like, and that's something that it's a problem. It's really a problem for the mutant future and everything, because everyone is just like, Danny and Karma just ran off to find one kid. I mean, there's no supervision over here, and that's a problem. Put Wolverine in charge of them.
In conclusion,
no, I mean, talking about Crucible, right? I would think that no girl would be like the right person to do a crucible because she didn't lose her body. Like Sublime was the one who basically, took her brain out and destroy her body, I think, or something like that.
Well, and also somebody in the crucible, somebody's just going to crack that little bulb like an egg and she's done. Like, it's not going to be a long fight.
Yeah. So it's just like, and I think if anyone deserves to get a body back, she should be the one who gets a body back.
But she doesn't.
But then we go back to what Danny said to Cosmar last issue, which is like, the crucible is specifically for people who have lost their mutant powers. It is not to make alterations to your physical form. But then we have No Girl who has no physical form. Like, where, I think this brings up interesting ethical questions. Like, is it ethical to let Cosmar go through the crucible? And no, not necessarily, because she has to accept who she is. Should the floating brain have to accept who she is? Like, that's a very different state of affairs to apply this standard of ethics to.
Yeah, but then my argument would be like, for No Girl, she didn't. I mean, it's not her power that makes her body disappear, right? It was more like someone did something to her body,
right, against her will.
I think there's a bit of difference in that sense. Yeah. Maybe you can go to like Cyclops, like, Cyclops says he wants to control his optic blast, and they're like, no. Why should you have that?
but the thing is also like, no, probably she doesn't want it. She's probably scared. Maybe she's just so used to this life and she's just scared to go back. Maybe that's the thing, because I don't think if she goes up to like, hey, I want to be part of a crucible, everyone's like, be right ahead, step right in, you look weird, we're all freaked out by you, step right in.
Well, but over here it did show that she's like, oh, I have a body, she jumped.
Maybe now she got the idea, so maybe it's coming up.
Maybe.
Well, look, there's a number of smaller plots interspersed here, and I don't know that we need to go to that depth in them, but I'm going to pull them out, and whatever you want to react to in them, you can. So the one kind of that takes up the most space here, and one of them is the one that Harry wants to secretly cut. We'll finally find out.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. So one of them is Rain's son, Tyr. She has a conversation with X-Factor, like, bring back my son. And X-Factor's like, well, we would, but he seems to still be being backed up in some way. He hasn't died in Otherworld, but something's happening with his consciousness, so we can't confirm his death, which is huge news and sends her into a spiral. There's also Magic teaching bullies a lesson, which kind of just got dropped last issue. We were like, whatever happened with that? So it gets delivered here. And I think it's interesting because is she doing good work here, or is she being cruel in being influenced by the Shadow King? Or again, can you be doing good and being cruel at the same time? It's kind of the flip side of the selfishness question, right? And then finally, we have a data page that, as we demand, we want more interesting data pages, we have said. And here we have Warpath answering the questions that Danny asked him 2 issues ago in a very kind of Dax the Destroyer from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie way. It cannot go over my head, I would catch it. He takes it very literally, but then, and I think a wonderful turn of humor, realizes from the further questions, he's like, perhaps you did not mean for me to take this literally. I will do my best to re-answer those questions now. Like, that you're in high school taking the blue book test and you already filled out a page and you're like, now I need to make this essay say something different, but I don't want to go back and scratch out that page. So how will I bend it around all? go together. So let's start with Harry. He never gets to go first. Harry, which one of these was the plot that you were going to cut and why?
The rain plot.
Yeah.
As someone.
Okay, no, get him out.
Okay.
Get him out there. Like,
as someone who doesn't have really any connection with this character, so I don't have half the emotions Fariha clearly has. I will not apologize for that. I should enjoy the book on its own. That's what something I'm buying this amount of money for should get me, in theory. Yeah, she found out that the kid might be alive. They don't know, and then she cried. And cool. That's really all I got. It felt like very glacially paced. It felt like something that didn't get a lot of attention. It just felt like a we don't know. Tune in next week. And then she missed out on Danny and was sad. And again, it just didn't do a lot for me. I don't want to be reductive. I don't mean to take away if you guys loved it, but it just felt like another thing that they've added on top of introducing a whole other Otherworld thing. And then the freak stuff, which isn't moving. And I'm just like, now we've got a bunch of stuff and not all of it's really moving beyond at a very slow progression. And I don't want to make it sound like I have a terrible attention span, even though I don't. But like, I just want something more from this, guys. I'm sorry.
Well, I will say that I liked the scene with iBoy and was it Prodigy too talking about it, but I don't know that we need to spend so long on her finding Danny's letter. Like we have data pages. That was
a lot.
Now I don't generally like when people do the whole broken up narration of somebody reading something over action. Like that pisses me off always, like even in the Bronze Age, but especially now that you have the data page where you can deliver a whole page of like well laid out text to do that kind of thing. I think it is unforgivable to have used a page of story on that. That was when I said this issue was almost perfection. Perfect. That was what was holding me back because I feel like it just lingered a little too long. Tyler, what did you think of these three plots? You don't have to talk about the rain plot. Magic, the rain path, rain. What do you want to dig into?
I mean, I only have one small comment on the rain plot is that I really hope that we don't go the route of poor, weak, weeping Uzbane's route, because I think she's past that. Like she has grown beyond that. So I don't want her to regress back into that. Oh, I'm so sad. I was like, do something, right? I mean, I think she's older now. She should be able to do something. I find that the magic confronting the bully part was kind of an odd placement here, because last issue she says that I'm going to figure out. I'm going to go confront them. Like she knows who they are. And then we had the scene at Doug's wedding, and this supposedly took place after that wedding. So it's like, oh, she went to find out, but she didn't find out enough. And then she took a break, and then she found them again the next morning. Like it felt off in terms of the pacing and the placement of where this occurred. Like I thought maybe it would have been better if, let's say, it started off with like these group of older kids helping rebuild the burnt down treehouse, and then as a flashback or as a caption saying that, oh yeah, magic confronted them regarding in a different narrative way. And I'll leave the warpath thing to Fariha. I think she has a lot to say about that.
Well, I think she has a lot to say about rain, if I'm guessing. So Fariha, what do you want to dig into in those three?
So the things like we talked the whole last issue about economy of women suffering, and I feel like this is kind of a good thing that we're seeing an end of it in a way that she may find her child, and that her child is alive, and then it's like there is something going on with her. I agree with Tyler. I really don't want to see crying Wolfbane again, because last issue I got really upset that it was Elixir or Josh, what's his name, who wrote the thing. It's like, oh, we're not doing anything further. We can't bring her back, because knowing their history, it's really infuriating that he said that. But now I'm glad that the X Factor are onto the case and they're actually working with her. So I think the story will come to an end and she will be reunited with her child, and something that I want for her to happen, because it's just this whole nonsensical female superhero suffering because of pregnancy and lost child. I hate that. I want it to end, and this is a way to end on that. But the magic one, I kind of like it, but I didn't have too much opinion because whatever she got. But the thing is, I did like that the bully came and gave like a Jean Grey plushie to a little kid. That was super cute.
Yeah.
Like it's like, here you go, child. I destroyed the house, but here's a plushie. The Warpath thing was very funny because it was just because as I was writing it, I was like, oh, he's taking the piss out of Danny, and then I'm like, oh no, he's actually didn't get it. But the thing is, like, the answer is like, oh, where do you see yourself? In reflection, sometimes in photographs, but like, it was funny.
He actually looked at his own photograph and said, "Oh, yeah, this is how I look like." I was like,
sometimes I look at the old photograph. So I mean, I don't know much about Warpath. So is he a little dim like that? Like,
no.
Is that
literal?
General? Is he literal like that? I
mean, he's not introspective.
Okay. So
I don't think he's not dumb by any means. He's just a very pragmatic character who's also very connected to the world. And I really liked how that kind of turned around to like, he almost made the question about your connection to the world. He's like, why would I introspect about myself so much? Like, I'm just one person who's part of this land of Krakoa. Like, what's so important about my introspection? I'm like, that is a very clever way to write that character that I don't think most authors would have picked up on.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good because I was like, well, is he like? I mean, that's one of the things I couldn't figure out. Like, is he like doesn't understand things, and that's why that was his reaction, or he was like, oh well, I just see myself in a reflection.
No, the two himbo New Mutants are Cannonball and Sunspot, and they're not around. I think you've said almost all there is to be said about these three plots. The only thing is with Tyr and Rain, it's like, Rain's so young, and I think just with her whole kind of self-hatred as, due to her Catholicism and being brought up to think she's a demon, I was never a fan of then layering on a pregnancy plot on top of that, where she slept with a god because Norse mythology, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's very Norse mythology, right? Like it's also very like Zeus as a swan. Greek, I mean, it's just all of those things. But I kind of was just relieved that maybe we were going to find some version of Rain that was not like the 19-year-old mother of an immortal grown son. So I'm like, I enjoy from a plot perspective that they're following this thread, but I'm also like, really, is what did we get Rain back to do this? So I'm kind of torn. Like, I'm hoping we'll get something good out of it, but I kind of just feel like I would rather just wipe her off the board right now. I'm so much more interested in what's happening with the other characters. So we'll see. So, wow. It was just a lot. It was super, super dense. Yeah. And I guess the thing that I'll say for my final round, and you can say anything y'all want, is I think the Warpath page is actually indicative of the whole issue. These are all people engaging in forms of therapy, right? Magic is asking the kids to do forms of service for an atonement, to think about the thing that they destroyed. Shadow King is literally saying, see it through somebody else's eyes. Danny and Karma are going off on kind of on their own kind of introspective trip, not to mention that, Karma was abandoned in the past. And so Danny is like, no, she's like, we're going to go together and work through these feelings together. And then you have the literal therapy that Warpath is undergoing. And it's kind of just like a whole book about different approaches to therapy and self-actualization, which I think is actually really interesting thematically without anybody hitting you over the head with a mallet going, this is what this theme is. It's really there in all of the stories. But that's my final comment. Any other final comments from the crowd on this one?
I just feel that it kind of clicked in place reading this, but this is a book that's juggling a lot, and I think it's doing most of it pretty well. I think this is the most clunky issue for me, but especially comparing this to, let's say, X Factor, which I think is a book juggling several plots extraordinarily well. That stuff like this, I think this book has very well established that the kids are not all right on Krakoa. I get it. Yeah. I get what you're saying. The kids are not in a good place. We gotta keep it moving, please. And I guess Otherworld's where we're going.
No, yeah. I think the next two issues will be Otherworld.
Don't tell me that.
Because the next issue is
bringing us down.
Danger ahead.
Bummer, man.
Danger is what the Krakoan words.
Danger ahead.
Danger ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you got it here, folks. Danger ahead.
Danger ahead.
That has been our discussion. of New Mutants number 16 as part of This Week in X. If you're looking for discussions of other books out this week, we've got them. You just got to look elsewhere on this channel for those discussions. So I want to thank everybody very much for talking about it with us. I think this one, I kind of assumed there was going to be more of a consensus, but we actually took away 4 very different kind of things on this, which was really fun because even when you love an issue, it's fun to hear that other people don't love it if you can actually have the conversation together. Like, don't let internet discourse fool you into thinking that just because somebody dislikes an issue that you've got to kick them off of your show. That's not really how the world works. We can still love each other and have a great conversation because why, Fariha?
Ugh, whatever. X-Men is better when it's read together.
Agree with Peter for my sake, or I'll be off the show next week.
So on behalf of myself, Tyler, Fariha, and begrudgingly Harry, we want to thank you so much for joining. No, we love Harry. We want to thank you so much for joining us for This Week in X, and we hope that you are well.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.